Mr. McDonald, congratulations on your nomination. I'm going to send you a letter dated February the 11th, 2026, signed by 17 of my colleagues, or 16 of my colleagues plus me, asking the Department of Justice to look at the subsidies under the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, that could not be reconciled by the GAO, the Government Accountability Office. It appears that there were brokers selling ACA policies to people who didn't even know they had received that policy and who made no claims under the policy, to the tune, at least in 2023, of unreconcilable expenditures of $21 billion. You know, healthcare is a huge issue for all of us in America, and the American people are extraordinarily generous when it comes to making sure that their fellow Americans get access to health care. But it is infuriating to see this system be gamed to the point that insurance companies receive windfalls of these subsidies and consumers receive zero benefit. Do you commit to working within the Department of Justice to make sure that those sorts of events are remedied, and if possible, recoup overpayments by the taxpayer to these fraudsters for the benefit of the American people?
Senator, what I commit to is working tirelessly to root out the sort of fraud that you've identified there, and to make sure that every single dollar that's supposed to go to these programs actually goes to the programs, to the beneficiaries, the intended beneficiaries of these programs, and not to fraudsters. That is my commitment.
Well, you're going to be very busy because, as you identified the scope of the problem, it is shocking. GAO in 2024 identified 16 agencies with 68 different programs with $168 billion in improper payments. Now, I suspect that not all those improper payments were as a result of fraud, but still, the scope of this is just boggles the mind. And we have about $38 trillion in debt. We're paying more money on interest in the national debt than we are on defense, which is unsustainable. President Trump, thankfully, has agreed to request a larger appropriation for our national security purposes next year, $1.5 trillion. But as you can see, this cannot continue. And I do think the job that you've been assigned to do could play a major role in addressing these improper payments, some of which is as a result of fraud, but all of which dissipates the money that taxpayers pay in their taxes, but also exacerbates our financial problems that are, as I said, unsustainable. Do you agree with that?
Senator, I do agree with that. The problem is huge. The Department of Justice, for instance, last year, for its total outlay of cost to support the 100,000 employee strong department, spent about $50 billion. The annual fraud against the American taxpayer, conservatively, is $233 billion. We must put attention on this program, and I will work tirelessly to do what I can to root out the fraudsters who are preventing this money and are exploiting the generosity of the American taxpayer and preventing this money from going to the needy beneficiaries.
So I've been trying to figure out how all this could possibly happen. And I think part of it is the way that the federal government actually spends the money and lack of accountability on the part of the people who receive those funds. Obviously, the Somali daycare fraud, obviously the money went to these non-governmental entities which provided non-existent services and basically stole the money from the American taxpayer. But would you commit to looking at the contracts and the grants that are made by the federal government to these outside groups, whether they be non-governmental organizations or contractors or grantees, to make sure that there is accountability for the funds that they actually receive in order to perform the services that the federal government expects them to perform.
Senator, my commitment is to work tirelessly to build a division, a national fraud enforcement division, where no fraud is too big for the Department of Justice and no fraud is too small for the Department of Justice to have the resources and the commitment to pursue the facts and apply the law wherever they lead to whatever criminally culpable actors there might be in the chain of fraud that we will seek to unravel.